All right, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the December edition of the astronomical, the Astro Imaging Special Interest Group from the Tucson Amateur Astronomy Association. As we do with most of our meetings, I'm going to take a moment to let any new members who this may be their first time on board introduce themselves. So if there's anyone who hasn't been here before and needs to introduce themselves, please take a second to do so. Looks like most of the names I recognize. All right, I don't see any new folks, so.
Hang on, Greg. I think we got a customer.
Oh, okay.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So I guess this is my first time on the Zoom Astro Imaging SIG. I'm a long ago TAAA member. I'm actually a past president, and it's been a while. I'm re-engaging and excited to get back into it and see some of the great stuff that you guys are producing. And so that's me. Hello, everyone.
Okay, welcome aboard. Anyone else? Okay. Usually in the first part of the meeting, we take a few minutes to see if anyone has any beginner questions. So if you have a question you think falls into that category, this is the time to bring it up, and completely open to whatever topic you might have in mind. Any beginner questions? No beginners this evening. Okay. Well, before we start with the regular presentations, I want to make a couple of comments. First of all, the topic for tonight was advertised as why I have more than one telescope. But I guess that's sort of a misnomer. It probably should have been named something like, so you're thinking about a new scope, because our goal was to review some of the instruments that folks use, so that those of you who are thinking about maybe I need a different scope, or maybe I need a better scope, or maybe I need to expand the number of scopes that I have. That's kind of what we had in mind for the content of tonight's meeting. So I didn't want to give the false impression that we're trying to say that if you only have one scope, there's something dreadfully wrong with you. That's not the intent at all. So with that in mind, we'll talk a little bit about, we'll have some folks who do use more than one scope describe why they do that. And hopefully that'll be of some interest to those of you who are thinking about expanding your arsenal. And I would also like to note that if you buy a good quality scope, most of the time those instruments retain their value. In some cases, they even increase in value. So it makes sense to think about, do I need a different type of scope for the type of imaging I'm interested in? Or am I happy with the scope that I have? So with that in mind, I'm going to turn the first part of our evening over to Randy Smith, who uses a couple different types of scope, and let him go through the instruments that he has in his arsenal, and you can ask him questions as we go along. So Randy, if you're ready, please feel free to share your screen.
Okay. Let's see if I can get things working here. I can get rid of the Zoom part here. Close that. Okay. Can we see that?
Yes.
Okay. Very good. Okay. Why do I have multiple setups and multiple scopes? I'm running two separate rigs now because the obvious reason is to double the number of captures I can get in the good nights that we have. So that's the basic reason. Also, I'm wanting to have multiple image sizes with different focal lengths. So those are my two goals that I'm trying to accomplish. Here's what I'm running right now. I have a heavy rig with a CQ350, and this is a 10-inch Newtonian on it. This rig can handle 70 pounds, so it can handle anything I will ever have. I can't imagine having anything bigger than the 10-inch Newt. Then the other rig, of course, is a Skywatcher 150i strain wave. And what you see there is a SQA 70. Both are set up for monochrome imaging with filter wheels. So my most basic scope, and if I only had one, I would go with the Skywatcher 200p. It's an 8-inch Newtonian. It's native at 800 millimeters at f4 with a Nexus reducer, a 0.75 reducer. You get to 600 millimeters at f3. 600, I think, is a really good. You can get pretty good detail on a lot of objects. I was always a little frustrated with the C8 Hyperstar, where you were at 390 millimeters, particularly when you were into smaller objects. But I've been very pleased with the 8-inch Newtonian. It does have the upgrades for the spider and the mirror mask, and those are musts. The Skywatcher 8-inch Newt, it's a cheaply made thing. I've got an upgraded focuser as well as upgraded spider and mirror mask, but then it performs very well when you do that. So I'd call it an all-around good scope. This is a picture of it. I'm not using that big heavy guide scope anymore. I'm just using it with the 30 millimeter guide scope, and it works just fine like that. You can just squeeze in Andromeda in the field of view with the 0.75 reducer, but it delivers a nice sharp image. The stars are pinpoint. You are going to get diffraction spikes because they come with the spider that holds the secondary mirror, so they're not optional. And I've kind of got used to them. Here's another image with it, so you can crop down pretty tight and still get some nice detail out of it. The next scope is the 10-inch Newtonian, the Skywatcher 250p. I have the same upgrades on it. This is native at 1,000 millimeters at f4 and with a reducer 750 millimeters. And you can use the same reducers with either scope. You could use those with any of this, the Skywatcher Newtonians, the imaging Newtonians, even there's a 6-inch also. I mainly have this for the small objects and for galaxy season, because so after you get by Andromeda and Triangulum, galaxies are all small. I feel like, I started with a C8 and then went to a C11. I used the off-axis guider shooting off the back. I was frustrated with that, and I feel like I get comparable detail with the 10-inch Newtonian at both 750 millimeters and at 1,000. So this is the 10-inch Newtonian. So you can get, even in galaxy season, you can get some pretty fine detail on some small objects. Here you're just looking at the heart of the heart, again with that same telescope. And the tadpoles really propped in tight, but I feel like I get good resolution with this. Of course, having large aperture is excellent for resolution. The next one is, I just kind of bought this for fun, a little ASCAR FMA 180 sextuplet. It was cheap, like $500, 180 millimeters at 4.5. I had had a Red Cat before, Red Cat 51, and I'd kind of missed that, but I wanted to go even wider field. So I've been very pleased with this little scope. It delivers pinpoint stars all the way across, and the detail is quite good for the focal length. Here it is. The everything around the scope dwarfs it. It's just a little tiny thing. But you can get a field of view like this. You can get all the way from the flame up through Orion. This is the Milky Way edge. You can see the Lagoon Nebula, and in the upper corner you get the Trifid. But again, the detail is pretty nice. Even if you are able to zoom in, you'll see some pretty good resolution on the stars. And it's wide enough to get all of the seagull, and way down in the right-hand corner, you see Thor's helmet, just to give you a little bit of idea of the scale that you get with this. It's not as wide as a Samyang 135, which maybe I need to add that too. But anyway, it's a good wide field scope. The last one I've just added, and I'm still trying to make friends with this one, is the ASCAR SQA70. It's a quintuplet refractor at 336 millimeters and f4.8. You can see I was looking to fill all from 180, 336, 600 millimeters, and up to 1,000. So that was kind of my goal, to get that variety. I really like Newtonians, and if I had been able to find a Newtonian that went down on this lower level, I would have gone with that rather than a refractor. But they're just not available in that focal length. So this is the SQA70. It's a similar field of view, maybe a little wider than what you would get with a CA Hyperstar, but it does a pretty nice job. And also, the stars are not as pinpoint as what you get with the Newtonian, and I'm having to get used to that. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. I will say it's been a bit of a shock when you add the second rig and you want to shoot monochrome, to go for a full set of filters and filter wheel and another monochrome camera. That investment's more than I've spent for any one telescope. So any questions?
Randy, you're using the 2600 mm?
Yes, I should have pointed that out. Yes, 2600.
And
Talk
Randy,
a little
how
bit
are,
about Go ahead.
Randy, how are you focusing the refractors?
Everything's just using the EAF.
All of them, yep.
All of them have, I have an EAF on each rig, so I don't have to move anything around.
Okay.
Randy, talk a little bit about the logistics. With all those scopes, how do you decide which two you're going to run on a given night? How long do you set them up project by project? How do you think about that?
Well, you have to do more planning. Give you something to look at while we're talking. You have to do some more planning and decide what you're going to use. I'm going to use the 8 or 10 inch Newtonians. I'll use one or the other on the big rig, on the CQ350. I will use one of the refractors on the other, so I have to make that decision. It's going to depend on a lot of what's available and the image size that you need. So I'm still working into that. And there may be nights when it's hard to find something that is good both ways. So that's a work in progress.
Thanks.
So Randy, you use 2 mounts and you swap the scopes around?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. There's a lot of overlap between the 8 and 10 inch because the 8-inch can shoot at 800 with the 1.0 corrector, and the 10-inch can shoot at 750 millimeters with the Nexus reducer. So you've got really, I got the 10-inch primarily for galaxy season, but I'm finding anything you want to crop in on, it's going to do a little bit better job just because you have more resolution than you get with the 8-inch. So, anything else? I'm running an air controller on each one of them, which sometimes you end up connecting to the one you don't want to, but that's just a matter of kind of working through that.
I got a question.
Okay.
What kind of coma corrector do you use on these Newtonians?
No, we got an echo back. I think that is that
Is
you,
that
Paul?
Paul, can you mute?
Yes, this is Paul Lorenz.
I know,
Paul,
but
now mute your computer.
we did not have any echo until you came back in. Okay, now we're good. To answer your question, Paul, the 0.75 reducer is a corrector, and the 1.0 is a corrector. So that's what the 0.75 is one of Starazona's products that they call the Nexus. They have a prototype that hasn't been finalized yet of the 1.0 corrector, and I've been using that as a prototype just to help them test that. Anything, other questions? If not, I will stop the share and turn over the
Okay,
floor over.
thank you, Randy. That was very informative.
Great, Randy, I do have one quick question for you.
Okay.
When you went to the FMA 180, is that the only scope you have right now where you're undersampled?
No, I think I am on the SQA 70 as well. I am drizzling too on everything I do with
Right.
both of those scopes. It's maybe a little borderline on the SQA 70, but I do get better results when I drizzle. It's kind of a pain because my graphics card, it can take 3 minutes or so to run the blur exterminator when you're drizzled with that 50 megabyte camera. So anyway, it's a pain, but I haven't quite opted for a faster graphics card yet.
Well, I'm slow as molasses with my M1, and it's maxed out at 16 gig by design for memory. So
Yeah.
that's my big bottleneck is running weighted batch processing. But I've been working on my workflow for undersampled images, and I think I finally figured it out. For my one-shot color narrowband images, which I make into SHO, HSO images, I found out that once I get through the process of getting rid of any gradients, and then I run Blur Exterminator, that's when I use integer resample, and the stars come out great. And I also found out when I was doing the WBPP, I was using a template for color calibration that was incorrect. And I switched it to auto, and that got rid of my donut holes and my stars, which is another topic. But I found if I can get it done early in the process, right after I do a gradient correction, and then do blur exterminator, then do integer resample down one or down two, then it's easier to work with the file sizes, and then from there, everything looks good in the end when I finally stretch it out.
Very good. Good. That's good to know. Thank you.
Is integer resample different than just resample?
Yeah, it is. It's different. I've tried both, and I compared both, and I found that integer resample is the newest version. Resample was prior to that. But I find I get good results whether it's set at average or median, which is the two choices you have. But it's been a journey for me to get this process down, and you don't realize the frustration and the pain I had to go through because this is the first time ever when I process an image and my stars look like they're just in really bad shape. But I finally, let's put it this way, I finally got to the point with my Heart and Soul Nebula project that I'm still working on that I put it on the forum to ask for opinions on the stars. And the guy who's in charge of Astrobin, who runs it, actually gave me a like. And I said, well, thank you for the like. That's the first like you ever gave me for any of my images. They said, well, I saw it. I just had to. And oh, by the way, it looks like your stars are in good shape now. So I figure it must be working at this point.
All right. Next up is Craig Harding, and he's going to kind of do the same thing Randy did, take us through his arsenal of equipment. So, Craig, are you ready?
Yes. I have to do a screen share here, so give me a few minutes to get things rearranged. Um, you see if this will actually do it when I go to presentation mode. All right, do you see the presentation?
Yes.
Looks good.
Excellent. Yeah, I found the slide as a sample um, presentation document, so it's like perfect. So this is a little bit of a repeat. So I've got several different telescopes, and same thing that Randy was identifying is, two or three of them are wide field for big nebulas, think Rho Ophiuchi or even kind of like the Heart or the Soul Nebula. They're relatively large. And I also use the wide fields for large galaxies or galaxy clusters. And then, the opposite side of it, I want to get most of the galaxies I try to shoot. I need very long focal lengths so that they get magnified enough that I'm getting decent data and um, zoomed in enough on them. So instead of trying to, I could have gone the route of saying, well, I'll just use a telescope that's maybe in the middle and do a lot of cropping. I decided that I really wanted to avoid some serious cropping and try to match the scope to the target. Um, Also, there's a little bit of it that's just a geekiness that's, I want to try different telescopes, different image train setups. So, you know, sometimes that's what happens is that it's like, oh, well, I'll just get this scope and try this out. And then the real benefit, kind of like what Randy was talking about, having two setups. When I go down to CAC, I either run two or three different setups at a time, and it is a little bit of a issue figuring out which ones I want to do. You got to kind of look at what cool objects there are, objects you haven't already imaged or you don't want more data on, and then back into which scopes fit that. But it also really changes from nebula season to galaxy season, right? So those are my reasons. Um, Whoops, where am I? Oh, okay. So field of view. Um, Basically, here's the scopes I'm going to talk about. And this was done in astronomy.tools where you can put in your telescopes and it'll show you on not a very good background, but it'll show you the field of view. So all the way from a Samyang, the biggest red box, this is, obviously Orion. You can see Orion's belt, and then the Horsehead Nebula, Orion Nebula. So it just shows you for what I have the variety of field of view that I'm aimed at. And for the most part, I kind of went for a doubling. So, from a 135 millimeter to an ASCAR FMA 230 to a 94 Sharp Star 94, which is at 415. The Astrotech is about 700, and then the 9 1/4 with the reducer is about 1500. And I'll get into that more over the next couple slides here. So here's the Samyang, and kind of the interesting thing is actually the Samyang is on the bottom. The guide scope's bigger than the telescope in this case. Whoops, accidentally hit a button. The nice thing about the Samyang, and this is my recent edition. I've had it out one time. I'm trying to do a spaghetti nebula. I need another night or two of data, but it's f2. I'm going to be running it at about f2.3, not with it's got an adjust. It's basically a camera lens, right? It's got an adjustable f-stop, but I'm going to use a filter ring or stop ring to take it down to about f2.3, so my stars on the edges are a little bit sharper. Got an EAF on it, 2600 MC Pro, so it is definitely not properly sampled, but I'm using drizzle at 2x to try to compensate for it. And you can see that the guide scope focal length is a lot longer than the telescope focal length on this one. This is what it would look like. I used Telescopius. I'm going to kind of do the same thing with Orion on all of them. The big green box around the edge is how it would frame up the Horsehead and Orion Nebula. The next one I have, and this one I got a few years ago, is the FMA 230. It was really my first drive into wide field. And I like this scope. It's got really nice sharp stars on the edges. If you notice, a lot of things I will show you here have pretty decent F ratios. 4.6 on this one. Again, I move the cameras from one to another, and I also move the guide scope from one to another. This one would, if I was to take the same Horsehead and Orion's Nebula, I would probably frame it like that. It pretty much fills the field, almost twice the focal length as the 135. The Sharp Star, this one I really, really like. It's f4.4, the 2600 MC air on it in this picture. I got a rotator also on it. It's out right now as we speak. It's out running on. This is actually, I set this up a couple days ago, and this is what it's doing out in the backyard right now, running the Heart Nebula on it. Looking at framing, so now drilling in a little bit closer, it would basically, and I wouldn't frame it this way, but just showing you how it now would frame Orion's Nebula at this focal length. And then what I would call my narrow field for smaller objects are these two telescopes. This is at CAC, obviously. The one on the right, the Astrotech 130. I always run it reduced to 715 or f5.6. And in this case, I've got an MC Duo on the back of it and a rotator. I had an Astrotech 115 before this. I decided to get a little bit more aperture, but I can tell you that the 130 over the 115 is a lot heavier. So at some point, I'll probably go back to the 115 as I find it harder to lift that thing. And then my really long focal length one is this Celestron 9 1/4. And it's 1525 millimeter focal length at f6.3. I'm running the Star Arizona reducer on the back of it. And the first camera I ever had was the 294 MC Pro. It's a little bit more the right size pixel. It's larger pixel than the 2600, so it kind of pairs well with the 9 1/4, and with flats, all of the amp glow basically um, gets straightened out. I also run the ASCAR OAG on this one. You can kind of see it sticking out in the picture with the 174 millimeter camera, and that guides really well with that. So framing up the 130 with the on Orion Nebula gets in a little bit tighter view. And if you want to take the 9 1/4, you'd basically only be looking at the Running Man portion of it. So that gives you kind of, on the same object, just drilling in on how much more it amplifies things. I do like with the 9 1/4 doing things like this, taking part of an object like the heart of the heart, and just focusing on that, or something like the Running Man and just focusing on that. It gives a whole new dimension to some of the astrophotography. So that's it. Any questions?
Yeah, Craig, how do you mount, or what do you mount the smaller two systems on, the Samya and the other one? Where are those mounted?
Those are going on the AM5.
Okay.
So I have two AM5s that I use for most everything when I can, and I'm going to be setting up a Gym 45 for the third one. I am also I have it's on the boat, so to speak, another new type of mount that the uh, uh, what's the name of them? ML Astro, I think it is making. And they're the guys that do that spectroheliograph. If you see a lot of sun images floating around on like Facebook, a lot of them are with the SPH 700 spectroheliograph. But they're coming out with a mount, so I got in the first batch of that. It's kind of like an AM5 at half the price. Any
So
other
Craig,
questions?
how do you get budget authority from your spouse for
Well,
scopes?
the cool thing is I just heard that, Greg said that these things hold value and actually go up in value. So it's kind of like an investment.
Yeah, I've only gotten so much mileage out of that argument.
But my solution to that is I encourage my spouse to spend liberally. Because the more she spends, the more I spend.
I use the right strategy. It's the tit for
Well,
tat strategy.
and someone told me there's no trailer behind the hearse. So, but when you get to be 80, your perspective changes.
Any other questions? I didn't really answer your question. I guess I don't ask. I just buy stuff, and hopefully it comes when she's not home.
Craig, I will just make one comment. When I went to that little ASCAR 180, you just get a whole different perspective when you go to the wide field, when you've been spending most of your time trying to get a higher and higher magnification to get in tighter. Once you relax and go way outside, you see all kinds of things, and you realize a lot of these objects we're cropped in on really have a lot going on when you get out away from them.
Yeah, like Row Fucci, I used to have to do a mosaic to try to get most of it. And with the 230, I think it was the 230 is the first one I got most of it in, but the 135 I want to try this year with the Row Fucci and see what I get, and maybe even mosaic it with the 135 because that thing's huge.
Since I got the SQA 55, my C8's been collecting dust
Ah,
for right now. I'm just hooked on the wide field. And the AM5N is a life-changing thing for me. I was really struggling with that AVX. I was able to use it and get it to work, but something about being able to hold your polar alignment right on the dot for 3 nights in a row and not have to make any changes to it. It's just fantastic. It's like a luxury for me.
Huh. All right. If
Okay.
no other questions,
All right. There you go. Okay. Our other presenter was Tom Eby, and he generously volunteered to share his information. And then it dawned on him that he had a family obligation, which was taking him back to Illinois, and he wouldn't be able to participate. But he did send along a few of his slides and some notes and asked if I would try to interpret his information. So I'm going to try to do that. Let me see if I can share this. Does everybody see that?
Yep.
Okay.
You might go to presentation mode, Greg.
Yeah. Let me see if I can bring that up. There we go. So this was Tom's notes, and he made a big. His main issue here was that of the many instruments that he possesses, he uses an approach like this to decide which instrument to implement on a particular night, and most of that, according to him, is based on the sky conditions. And the sky conditions in this case, as you see in the second bullet point there, are seeing and transparency. And so I looked up the definition of those, the common definition, and just so we're always all talking about the same thing here, seeing is generally referred to as atmospheric steadiness. That is the lack of air turbulence or twinkling of the stars, if you think of it that way. In other words, how steady is the image that's coming down through your optics. Transparency, on the other hand, is defined as sky clarity, and that's influenced by things like haze, dust, smoke, and moisture. And moisture kind of gets a bad rap some of the time, but again, if you're into planetary imaging, you'll know that a lot of great planetary images come out of Florida and the Philippines, where they have year-round high levels of humidity. And so the moisture factor sometimes actually helps with steadiness, depending on what you're imaging. So according to Tom's notes here, he considers poor to fair seeing when the stars show up in a range of 3 to 4 full width half max. And under those conditions, his option is usually to use a shorter focal length, something less than 800 millimeters. Some of you might not consider that a small, sharp focal length, and a telephoto type lens. And that's assuming that the transparency is good, but the seeing is just fair. And so the preferred targets under those conditions, according to his rationale, are something like large, bright or dark nebula, star clouds, open clusters, or the occasional comet. Then under good or excellent seeing, which he usually defines as 2 to 3 full width half max, that's when he would opt to use a longer focal length object. And by longer, he defines that as something on the order of 1,200 millimeters or greater. And under those conditions, then he sees the preferred targets as small to medium galaxies, face-on spirals, some of the smaller targets like planetaries and globulars. And he notes that small, bright targets aren't affected very much by transparency, but the seeing is really the key, no matter what you're doing. And he says, of course, if the seeing is bad and the transparency is poor, you're better off just going back and reprocessing some old data. So these are some of the scopes that he uses, and this is on a night of what he would consider good seeing, 2 to 3 full width half max. We measure this every night at our remote observatory, and for most of the year here in southern Arizona, southern New Mexico, I would have to agree that on the range of 2 to 3 full width half max on our all sky camera, that's typically about the best you're going to get. We do get some nights when it gets sub 2 arc seconds, but in general, I would agree that those are what I would consider nights of good seeing. And so under those conditions, again, the targets are small to medium galaxies, planetaries, and globulars. And he goes with one of these following focal lengths and camera combos. And you can see he's got a nice table here showing you that he's got an RC8 and an RC10, along with the C11 running at f7, and then kind of a scope that shows up on this slide and the next one is his RASA 11, which is a fairly fast scope, which has a shorter focal length, but he has it on both of these. I'm not sure why he included it, but again, I think that it's he can use that for these particular types of targets under good seeing. In any case, you see that he's using a one-shot color camera of various different varieties there, and he's calculated out what the pixel resolution is for these nights of good seeing. And again, all of them except the last one are pixel resolutions under 1 arc second per pixel. And he's got a listing there as well as the field of view. And I think Craig did a nice job of showing you that you can use things like astronomy tools to actually figure out what your field of view is going to be before the action actually begins. NINA has a nice way of doing that on its selector as well. So he's got some notes there at the bottom, but again, those are the types of units that he would use under what he would consider nights of good seeing. On the nights when the seeing is not quite as good, that's when he would opt to go for some of the larger, more diffuse objects and opt to use the shorter focal length and some of the similar cameras. And so you can see he uses a 2600, a 2400, and a 585 to get various different resolutions as well as field of views. But in these instances, he's using the RASA 8 or RASA 11 to get a fairly short focal length, as well as a couple of sharp focal length refractors as well. And so he's got a wide variety of choices there, as well as the same lens that you saw described before. The Rokinon and the Samyang are basically the same critter. And it's a 135 millimeter camera lens. But again, those are the options that he would pick from for nights when the seeing is not as good. I think on the first slide, I may have glossed over it, but he uses various different sites like Astropheric or the Clear Sky Clock to just try to decide ahead of time what the seeing is going to be. And that's sometimes a crapshoot, because sometimes the Clear Sky Clock will indicate that you're going to have a cloudless night and it's going to be good seeing, and you get your equipment set up and find out that, well, that's not the case. A lot of that, again, depends on where you are and how accurate the weather predictions are. So he also gave us a couple of examples of some of the stuff that he's used. Here's the RASA 11, which he shoots with a lot. It's focal length in a moderate range there, 620, but it's an f2.2 focal ratio and works well for a wide variety of objects, including things like the Ghost Nebula there that you see in the background. And then it can be, you can crop in and get things like NGC 772 or the Cocoon Nebula as well. Some other ones that he uses here, this is the longer focal length option that he goes with. This is an RC10 that he has. And I'm assuming that he's using a reducer flattener there to get it down to f6.4, but that gives you a focal length of around 1625 millimeters. It's on a AP Mach 2 mount, so he can use a technique called deck arc tracking, which we had discussed a year or so ago, which allows you to do a lot of imaging without guiding or with just doing bump guiding. But again, that particular system is more designed for the smaller galaxies. And so you can see here a couple of examples of targets that he went after using this particular setup. Another setup that he uses is the little sister, the RC8, again around 1600 millimeters focal length, but again with the various different cameras and with field flatteners, it can be used for pretty much a wide variety of some of the smaller objects like planetary nebula, smaller galaxies. And you see in the image there the setup that he uses with an off-axis guider. Finally, he's got a couple of small refractors. I'm not sure why he has both a 70 and 80. I guess because, you know, those stellar view instruments are pretty nice small instruments, although they're a little dated now. There are a lot of small refractors available now, as you've already heard. But again, these give him focal lengths in the range of 480 to 335 to 480. They operate on the CEM mounts, and so they can do unguided imaging for the most part. And this works well for some of the wider field objects that you see illustrated here. So again, those are the devices that Tom uses, and I'll, be willing to try to answer any questions based on the notes that he sent me. But if you have any questions, go ahead and ask.
Greg, do you know how many mounts he runs a night typically?
I'm not sure. I get the impression that he only runs one at a time. From the, he posts a lot of, or he sends me a lot of images, every few days. So he's operating every clear night, but I get the impression that he runs maybe one at a time. I could be wrong about that. I'll have to ask him when he gets back to town. Other questions? All right. I'm going to stop sharing, and if anyone has any other questions they'd like to bring up, or if you have a dynamite image that you'd like to share, this is the time to do it. I had a couple of images of my scopes in case we didn't get any volunteers. And one thing that didn't come up was planetary imaging. And so for my planetary imaging, I use a C11 with a 2x Barlow, which kicks the focal length up to around 5,600 millimeters. And with a ASI 294 camera, that gets you a pixel resolution down around 0.15. So you need nights of pretty steady seeing to do planetary imaging. But when you do get nights of pretty clear seeing, that combination of scope and long focal length and that size pixels on that camera tend to work out fairly well. So I thought I'd just throw that out for your
And
edification.
you're not binning it?
John.
You're not doing like bin two?
No.
Huh.
Why
And then
would I?
you shoot it
You
as
want a
video?
long focal length.
Huh? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I was asking if you were binning it.
Well, that would make the pixel resolution less, right?
It would move it more towards being sampled correctly.
Oh, well, it seems to work pretty well without binning.
Yeah.
Although on some images I do drizzle 1.5 when I'm stacking for planetary.
And the planetary, you do video or you do
Yes, video.
yeah.
So Craig and Randy, any tips for those of us uh, poor souls with only one telescope who are thinking about a second one, just for integrating in that next system? What do you change? You know, I saw a lot of pictures of EAFs. Do you have a separate EAF on every rig? Do you have a separate mini P or separate air or mini PC on every rig? And what do you think about when you're setting up a new instrument?
I have an EAF on each one. So but I'm moving, I have two 30 millimeter guide scopes and I move those around. One thing I'd point out, when I initially got that little FMA 180, I put it on top of either the 8-inch Newtonian or the 10-inch, whichever I had mounted, and just it was clamped to the top rail. And I didn't try to shoot both at the same time, but I was able to use the one mount and easily shoot the FMA 180 just piggybacked on top of, say, the 10-inch Newtonian. It was a way to use it without having to figure out how to remount it on your primary mount or undo your mount that you wanted for the normal. So there's ways to put it on the top and run it that way. So it makes it even easier if you just want to get one of those Samyang or the FMA 180 or one of the really small ones. It works fine as a piggyback. And I do have an air I've got two airs, one for each rig. So separate EAFs, and one air per rig and one guide scope per rig.
And I'm set up to be able to do 3 different rigs at a time. So three airs, and I also have a Nina, small little Melee Quieter 3C running Nina. So I use that from time to time. But Randy was talking about, it'd be nice to be able to just leave a setup, configured the way it is and just um, put the cabling on once and kind of get the cabling all nailed down so it's nice and organized. But I move things around all the time from rig to rig. Back to like, well, what would you do as a next telescope? I always looked for kind of some. I think I mentioned my progression is like double. It goes from 115 to 230 to 415. So I look for a hole. I started really with the C8, and then I got rid of that and got a C9 1/4. So that's long focal length, and then did the 730 behind that. I said, well, this is too long in many cases. So I did the 730 behind that, and then I kept going downward in terms of wider field because I was always running into things that I thought I'd want to get a bigger view of.
So when are you going to go with 180-degree all sky lens?
That's a weather lens.
Jeff, I think one thing that a lot of folks should think about if you're going to increase your scope arsenal is, can I use the same mount? That's a key ingredient because I think in many cases the mount cost way more than, or if you want to invest your money wisely, the mount costs a lot more than many of the scopes do. And so it's really smart if you can have a mount that you can use with multiple different scopes. Although the downside of that is you have to swap them out. So I have a C11 on my mount, but when I want to shoot wide field and put my Takahashi FSQ 106 on, I got to take the C11 off and put the other one on, which is, kind of juggling two big heavy optical systems, but I've gotten to the point where I can do it in a half an hour or so. But I think being able to use the same mount, the same guide scope, the same camera, all of those things kind of fall in place when you're thinking about, going to a different size focal length.
Thanks, Craig.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Okay. Well, I've got two announcements. One is we're going to do this again next year. So in January, our meeting will be on the third Monday. That's January the 19th. Same setup as usual. And again, if you have a topic that you'd like to hear discussed, please either send me an email or send Jeff Rothstein an email, either one of us or both of us. And particularly if you'd be willing to lead a discussion, we appreciate that, because most of the topics that we've discussed over the past year have been ones that have been suggested by the membership. So again, feel free to contact either one of us if you have something that you'd like to hear about, because if you've got questions about it, it's entirely possible that there are other folks that have similar questions. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Jeff, do you have anything you want to throw in?
One item, you'll all recall the little survey that I posted before Thanksgiving about interest in a meetup at CAC at some point. The response was very positive. So we're going to target probably April. And it would be a couple days, one side or the other of the new moon weekend that CAC, targets the entire TAAA community, because I think we can probably fill the bunkhouse as well as some campsites and camper spots. So a number of you have offered to share a little bit of your time. I don't think there's going to be a ton of planning to do. I think there's an opportunity for maybe a couple of presentations and having time to walk around and visit one another's rigs and have an open house. But I've reached out to those of you who volunteered to help. We'll do a little brainstorming and start planning this in earnest at the start of the year. But I really like the idea of being able to see everybody in person instead of just 36 by 24 millimeter boxes above Greg's head.
I have a question regarding CAC now, especially for you to go to a regular basis there. I know there's a bridge construction now between Vail and Benson on I-10 that's causing a lot of delays. Are there alternate routes to get to CAC?
There's not effective alternate routes. I haven't been through there with the bridge construction yet, but I'm going there Thursday night or Thursday afternoon, so I'll get to experience it. I did ask somebody that travels that all the time, and they said, well, you can go down to Sonoyta and around, but that takes just as long as or longer than waiting to get through the bridge construction. I saw that ADOT did some changes in how they were blocking that. I don't know if it eased some of the backups that were going on, but and I haven't seen anything recently about it, like in the last couple days.
I would encourage you to leave early. I went to the dedication of the 32-inch telescope on the bus, and it took us over 3 hours. 1 hour of that was just sitting in traffic waiting to get through that bottleneck. So
Oh my God.
it's a mess.
The
Leave early.
backups are very, very long. I think I spent almost an hour trying to get through it about a week ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is it in both directions or just eastbound?
Eastbound.
Oh, only eastbound?
Well, they're doing something going the other way, but it doesn't seem like there's as big a backup as the eastbound lanes.
I think I spent at least an hour trying to get through it last week or the week before. It was miserable. It reminded me of LA, and that was not a pleasant experience.
Maybe we could rent a chopper.
Yeah.
Hopefully it'll be done before April. All right. Well, thank you everyone for participating, and I hope to see you all again next month.
Happy holidays, everybody.
Yes.
Same to you.
Thanks. Happy
Merry Christmas.
holidays.
Happy Hanukkah.
Thank you, guys. Excellent meeting tonight.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas
Thanks.
all.
Thank you.